it was 9 o'clock at night after a few wines, and I said to my sister, contact the agent, tell him that I'm going to be representing you and looking after the transaction. She's like, oh, he's not going to be up. I said, Lucy, they're hunters. Like, this guy lives and breathes the deal. And so messages him. He's like, yep, 10 a.m.'s fine. So I rock up at the house, 10 a.m., have a look through, really beautiful home. And I said to Mark, great, so what's your comparables for this property? And he listed these comparables that A, weren't comparables, but B, from a price point, were well above what, I understood the area to be. And so I said to him, okay, thanks, So I went away and being a big data company, we jumped on our database, did some comparables, and sure enough, we found comparables that were 1.5 mil less than what he had provided. So I went back to him and back and forth for the week, but provided really clear data as to why our offer was more than fair and more than reasonable. And we ended up buying the property by the end of the week on Thursday, below the figure that I committed with my sister. So she was ecstatic. But it really dawned on me how, I had that privilege because I run a data business in property, but buyers don't have that information.
They don't pay. Welcome to the Make Tomorrow podcast, where we venture into the heart of innovation, technology, and the future of business. I'm your host, Tristan Sternson, Senior Partner and Global Co-Lead of NCS Next. From AI and digital trust to immersive computing, we bring you insights and stories that inspire action. Join us as we meet with industry experts, tech leaders, and disruptors who are not just predicting the future, but making it happen. Whether you're an industry professional, tech enthusiast, or just curious about the next big thing, this podcast is for you. Let's discover how we can make tomorrow smarter and brighter together. Today we had with us Jeremy Hastings from Hutley and Bondable. He's going to share with us how he's revolutionising through technology the real estate and property management industry in some amazing ways. So very fortunate to have you today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Tristan. Pleasure to be here.
We were having a really good conversation before this around the real estate industry and technology. One of my favourite topics. I would have loved to have done what you've done, and maybe we'll get into one of the technologies I created for the real estate industry that is the best technology ever that we never took off. It's sitting there on my shelf, right? And we could talk about that afterwards. We love to jump straight into this, and this is going to be the easiest question you'll ever have, right? Because you've probably done it already. If we could give you a blank check to create one technology overnight, we don't really give you the check, by the way.
Bummer.
Yeah. What would that be?
Yeah, wow. For me, it's I've got a fear of aging. So I'm terrified about getting old, and I'm starting to go grey. So if there was one technology I could invent, it would be to reverse age.
Wow. Okay. You just hit on my passion project. This podcast might go in a different direction now. I can't see any grey hairs, so you're doing okay. Maybe it's the lighting, but it's all good. Tell us a little bit about Bondable and Hutley to get started.
Yeah, so Hutley was really born back in 2018 from a view that real estate's broken. You've got the last bastion of change in a digital world is real estate agencies, and I can see a world where bricks and mortar agencies no longer exist. Back in 2018, I had this view that they shouldn't exist at all, and but I've since corrected myself because I think no matter what, people don't want to be accountable for their biggest financial decisions. So I think there's a necessity for a property manager and a sales agent, but the way it's working right now, it just doesn't work. So we went about to change that.
It's a pretty archaic industry. I mean, we've seen it. I think we talked about PEXA before, right? That was probably the biggest revolutionary change to real estate to some extent. And then you got realestate.com and stuff. But what else is out there? Like it's a bit of an archaic industry.
Oh, absolutely. And it's even worse than that. At the moment, the vendor, buyer, landlord, tenant, they're all playing second fiddle to their lives and so what's the biggest transaction they'll ever make. And we just want to put the power of transparency, data, and bring equality back to that relationship. And so I not that I have a bad view of property managers and agents. I think they come with great intent to do their best job, but the old system's broken.
I mean, I do a bit in a property space, and every time I rent a property or I buy a property, I'm just amazed, right? That you have to get a physical title with like someone's initials on it from the 1970s or 1850s. But
even worse than that. So, I look back over my experience, and my wife and I had an investment property in Parks, and I chose the property manager because I played rugby with him. Amazing rugby player, terrible property manager. He knows who I'm talking about, so I apologise if he listens in. But so we moved to another gentleman who had bought the house off originally. And he was telling us this whole time that the tenant couldn't afford to pay rent. And my wife and I were like, okay, that's all right. We're here to help them out. Told us it was a single mum, which brought back memories for me. And eventually we got a note from Department of Fair Trading, and he'd been stealing from the trust fund. So we reached out to the tenant. The tenant had a broken stove, a hole in the roof from an evaporative aircon leaking, and the agent had been telling her that the owners were refusing to invest in maintenance. And so the whole time she had been paying rent, and the money was being stolen. So he went to jail for 3 and a bit years, was one of the biggest trust frauds at the time. And it was that's one of the experiences I've sort of drawn on and gone, geez, we just, as much as you would like to think you can trust an intermediary, I think history has proven that that's not the case.
Yeah, right. Got to worry about all those bonds I got in trust for rental properties now. But and you don't just go from 0 to like 10 kilometres and work your way up. You're already you're down the path of blockchain and everything, and I think that's fascinating. Tell us a bit about the solution around bonds and blockchain and how that all works, and your own coin as well.
Yeah, so Hartley Pay, we're launching in about 8 weeks. The journey to blockchain started in 2018. We saw it as it's interesting, you look at payments generally, and nobody knows that Swift underpins, most of the transactions they make. And so people have, I think that the use of technology underneath is largely irrelevant. So we don't speak too publicly normally about the blockchain side of Hutley, but certainly we've seen a shift in people's acceptance of blockchain and the role that it has to play. In fact, I went to an event about 2 weeks ago and they asked everybody to stand in a line. If 0 is blockchain is never going to be a thing, and 10 is it's the future. They asked 2 questions. One, where does everybody stand back in 2016? And everybody was like, it's a biggest Ponzi scheme known to mankind. And they said, and how does everybody feel now? And the entire room moved to 10. It's got a meaningful place. So back in 2018, we saw smart contracts as a means to really bring efficiency and transparency to that transaction. But we also saw an industry that is just simply was not ready at the time.
Yep.
And so we said, okay, well, what's the best path to market? Because trying to disrupt the sector is exceptionally difficult. They've withstood lodged by BPay and Boston Consulting Group. They've withstood, your bonds are different. No amount of money being thrown to some of these solutions have been successful. So we said, how about we just focus on the contract? It's the nexus of, 73 data points. It's where all the parties are obligated to transact. And where financial transactions stem from. So we said, let's just invent a platform that enables any contract to be uploaded and transacted. And that's what we did. So we now do 1 million contracts a year. We have about 3,900 odd real estate agencies using our solution and about $18 billion a year worth of contract value. So Hartley Pay, although the genesis of that concept was right back in the day, it's only now that we've found ourselves in a position to really embark on the next, what we see as the next frontier of real estate.
$18 billion. Right.
Yes.
We're not talking a few cents here. That's a serious commitment of people using it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's just a small amount of the market as well.
Yeah, it is. So if you look at real estate globally, $613 trillion asset class. Right. Australia is about 7.1 US trillion. And so we're a small market relative to the rest of the world, but property in Australia has this, I'll say an irrational emotional drive to it. But we're not going to fight. We're a big fan of it, but certainly Australia's a different market. So when we look at the Hartley Pay, it's all about how do you remove the risk to money. Yeah. So it's really about improving the trust and transparency that the two end users have in how money's transferred in real estate. We're seeing increase of scams. AI is a really interesting change to how scams will be conducted in the future. And so we need to find ways that actually protect people's data, protect the transaction. Yeah. And we see blockchain as a really logical solution for that.
So scams and cyber issues, right? So blockchain to me is a very advanced solution for all this, and most people understanding the blockchain, it's not that complex, right? People think it's very complex, and it actually isn't. It's just a file floating around, right? To some extent, right? Yeah. But if I've got $18 billion on that platform, right, in Australia, and it's in the blockchain and it's moving around and stuff like that, how do we mitigate against cyber security and people trying to get to that money?
Yeah, absolutely. So to transact on blockchain, you need a key, and that's your personal key. So it's all about security of that key and who holds that key. So we see a world where your smartphone holds all your data, holds all your information, and also holds your ability to approve or not transactions. And that key, it used to be an issue. If I lose my key, that's less of an issue now. You can actually, Guardian Wallet's already shown that you can have now different portions of your key separated out over 3 different accounts. So you might have to recover a key, log into Facebook, Google and something else, give you a portion of your key back. So key recovery is now solved for, which is a big thing. But we see a world where, tenant, great example, tenant at the moment to apply for a property, it's a bank loan. Here's everything about me. Here's all my personal information. Yeah. And you're trusting a real estate agency who, in most part, will store it in an unsecured file on a computer or as a photocopy in a filing cabinet. And these days, we just can't have personal information being handled that way. So, we see very soon when we launch our tenant application platform that a tenant's data will be in their wallet. It'll be guarded on-chain. They'll choose who sees it for what purpose and for how long, and they'll have the only key to that data. So essentially, all an agency needs to see is a green tick for ID. They don't need your ID.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm just thinking right now, like whenever I do a property or anything like that, I'm just trusting the agent, right? And you've trusted an agent in the past who's then been, pulling funds out of that, ended up in jail because it's easy to do. But technology is a really good way to stop that. That could be your security guard around the cash, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You talk to cybercrime. If I'm a cyber criminal, real estate agents is a really rich source of data and information. So the more we can put that ownership back in the hands of the end user, the better.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So talk to me about transactions and other areas of real estate, so outside of the bonds, and what else are you going to use technology to disrupt that hasn't been done before?
Yes. I see a day where, I start planning the future. I go, okay, fractional ownership of a home. So we separate out land ownership with the physical ownership of the asset on top. You can bring liquidity to land. So super funds, et cetera, can then transact in that fractionalized economy underneath. And then on top, you still own your house. You still have all the rights you've always had. So your home ownership rights are no different to today. You can choose to sell or buy that house, and the capital appreciation is there, but you lose the underlying land value. Now, that's a super interesting concept. You then pay a small yield to the landholder or the landowner, which is that tokenized asset, and but you essentially you reduce the cost of buying a home by 50%. So that's one way that we see the future operating. Another way is you could actually take the entire home and fractionalize it, and somebody might own 51%, so they still have control over the entire asset, but the other 49% is held by a more liquid token. There's some of the concepts we've been playing with at Hutley, but the reality is even just using data in a different way. At the moment, there's no transparency on the buyer side or on the tenant side. So we're the only real-time data provider in the country. So we see when somebody renews a tenancy agreement, what's the rent that they're paying.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, the only time people see that litmus test of what's going on in the market is when it gets listed. But the median tenancy length is 21 months. So a lot happens in the market and in between those dates that provides us some pretty unique insights to what's going on.
I mean, our first business is data and analytics, right? And so, I think it's really important, and it really does frustrate me when you can't see those rentals and even buy price of properties or rentals and stuff, because it makes it a more even market in the space. So how do people have to be on your platform to do that? Like, is that the way it works? Are you going to tap into other platforms?
Yeah, so I'm always one for, I call it partner for success, because anyone that goes to technology thinking they're going to be able to serve everybody outside of Alphabet Group is quickly realises you can't. And so for Hutley, we're the infrastructure that transacts real estate. So we're data and payments end-to-end on any given contract, be commercial, sales or leasing. But we plug into 23 CRMs at the moment. So for us, it's really about how do you bring mobility to that data across different use cases and different solutions.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's so we see a world where, why can't you buy a home in a click of a button? At the moment, Pexel is revolutionary, but just one small step to where we really should be. Buy a house with a click of a button on a smart contract, and then the settlement period is no longer settlement. It's actually the period that you have left in the house before you have to move out. And so you're negotiating, you want to stay for 30, 60, 90 days, and then that interim solution, looks very different. So for us, we see how do you bring transparency, which is giving the buyer Now, my sister, great example. So my sister asked me to actually buy a better bottle of wine. So I was at their place on a Sunday night. They were looking at buying in Sydney. I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this story, but they were in Sydney. And I was over there briefly in Brisbane, and they had found a house that they wanted to buy. And I said, okay. And they told me the price that they wanted to pay, and the price that they wanted to pay, in my opinion, was too much. And I said, no, that's too much. And so I placed a bet with them that by the end of the week, I would have bought the house for them, and we agreed to a price that I would not go over. And they were like, if you can achieve that, unbelievable outcome. So I met the agent the next day. In fact, that night, it was 9 o'clock at night after a few wines, and I said to my sister, contact the agent, tell him that I'm going to be representing you and looking after the transaction. She's like, oh, he's not going to be. I said, Lucy, they're hunters. Like, this guy lives and breathes the deal. And so messages him. He's like, yep, 10 a.m.'s fine. So I rock up at the house, 10 a.m., have a look through, really beautiful home. And I said to Mark, great, so what's your comparables for this property? And he listed these comparables that A, weren't comparables, but B, from a price point, were well above what, I understood the area to be. And so I said to him, okay, thanks, So I went away and being a big data company, we jumped on our database, did some comparables, and sure enough, we found comparables that were 1.5 mil less than what he had provided. So I went back to him and back and forth for the week, but provided really clear data as to why our offer was more than fair and more than reasonable. And we ended up buying the property by the end of the week on Thursday, below the figure that I committed with my sister. So she was ecstatic. But it really dawned on me how, I had that privilege because I run a data business in property, but buyers don't have that information.
They don't pay.
And it's shocking. In Victoria, it's a little bit better. You've got a statement of information and the agent's 10% above or below on the sale price that gets looked at. So there's an element of scrutiny, but an element. But certainly New South Wales and Queensland, it's a wild west.
So I've got a similar story where I sold a property once and I had 3 agents come through, but they gave me the comparables of what they were selling it. And they were going miles out. They just didn't have the data available because they use, I can't remember what the platform is, the data platform they all use, but it's junk, right?
Yeah.
I'm a data person. This is my background. I do everything analytics, right? I'm analysing my own glucose at the moment, not because I need to, because I want to, right? Yeah. That's what I do. I think that's highly important. If you can see stuff and what you've done by going to an agent, giving them the data, they can't refute that, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly, and I'll get your opinion on this. So I was chatting to someone, and I reckon it was about 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about the sale of our businesses. And he said, how much due diligence is doing that? And I'm like, oh, this one took 3 months, and this one took 12 months, and this one took 11 months. And he goes, yeah, that's great. He goes, when you bought your last house, how much due diligence did you do on it? And how much did you pay for it? And I went back and said, I walked through it 3 times, right? So how do we solve that? I mean, this is a way to...
And 3 max, because the agents know, any more than 3, you're a no. And so there's a rule of thumb in the industry that you get 3 viewings, because any more than that, you're talking yourself out of the transaction.
Yeah, right.
You're finding reasons not to buy. And agents know that...
But hang on, an agent will tell you, this person's been through 4 times, they're super... 5 times, they can buy, right?
No, opposite. Yeah, then once you max 3 is the rule. And so agents are, the beauty of an agent, depending on what side of the transaction you're on, but the beauty of an agent is they have done this for a living for a very long time and know exactly how to tackle that problem. So they show you at a particular time of day, they give you, an element or a particular amount of data for you to make a decision, and it's never too much. It's just enough for you to keep your palate wet and buy it. So and I think that's wrong. I think there's an element of real estate at the moment that's broken, and that agent, and even buyers agents in Australia at the moment, I know it's in its relative infancy as an offering, but I cannot separate it from the reality that if you're paying a percentage to the buyer's agent, they're not on your team.
Yeah.
Their job is to get the price high, and they're remunerated as a result. So that buyer-seller side, which has just been broken in the US on the recent court case against the MLAs, MLSs, but I think it's just another element of the sector that needs to be fixed.
Artificial intelligence, how's that going to play a big part in what you do?
Yeah, we've been watching quite carefully, and I do laugh about there's a million companies now saying that there are AI companies as opposed to just using AI tooling. So we've been doing a bit of work at Hartley at the moment saying how do we use AI tools to drive efficiency both operationally for our business, but also when it's customer facing, what we can do to help them. I think it's scary. Like I think I see a lot of opportunity being an entrepreneur with it, but I still at the same time think it's scary, and I think it's the rate of change. Look at the Industrial Revolution, and the rate of change was slow but scary because of the quantum of the impact that it had on people's lives. And I think AI is the same, but happening at a speed that the world isn't ready for. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I see a huge opportunity around, we've got a big data business. There's plenty of opportunity for us to gain better insights we're probably not even aware of at this point. I think when it comes to the collection of data and how we surface that information, workflows we can offer customers, replacing our CS team all the way through to our call center, there's a whole lot of efficiencies there. But I can see a world where the next $1 billion business is probably here today that will only have a founder and AI, and that's it. And I think that's very real now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Let me throw some ideas, mate. Let's have a bit of fun here, right? Every time you buy a property, you get a Section 32, you send it to a lawyer, you pay them $800, and they come back and say it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Surely we can do something which just interprets it. Tick, 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 tick. AI would do that for you.
Yeah.
So anything you need to know, bang.
Yeah. I think that's an easy one to solve for anything conveyancing related. It's a sector that the ecosystem that won't exist very soon.
Right. That's our first business. We're going to tick that one off, right? That's your AI plus this founder. What about metaverse, or I call it immersive experiences, right? If someone's investing in a property, or they're overseas, or they're somewhere else, and they can't physically visit the property. Now, people will, obviously videos online. Some people do the 360 views and stuff. Have you thought about any of that, or do you do any of that?
Yeah, super interesting. So we do about 60,000 inspections at the moment, a month on our solution that we have, and it's a really old piece of crap. Not that I should say that about my own business, but we acquired this company that had this inspection software and has good cult following. Now it's terrible. Like you can pull out an Apple phone now and use LiDAR to do a full 3D image of a property. That naturally should replace any inspection software, and then you should be able to pin where the problems are, and that way a tenant can self-inspect. So why do you actually need someone to come to your home? Like the technology could easily replace that. AI could then go, okay, well, there's a hole in the wall that wasn't there before. You can start actually just doing simple image comparison. So I see a world where there's efficiencies can be found there, but what's important there is that the privacy aspect that it delivers a tenant.
That'd be awesome. I mean, I've got a few rental properties, and number one, I hate the photos, right? Because it's hard to tell the difference. And I'm always going, pull this one up, pull this one up, pull this one up, because if I want to see the difference, there's mold here. Okay, well, was it there 3 months ago? There's a problem with the bathtub and stuff. Yeah. So technology to do that, would be extremely valuable, not just to the tenant, but also to the landlord too.
Yeah.
I really, like in the AI world, like virtual reality, immersive, etc. We talk about virtual or immersive AI, right? But really, a lot of the time, it's just things like augmented reality and stuff like that. Are there things that you can do, like, go into, and this is business idea, what are we up to, 2 or 3? I don't know. We're making millions here anyway. If I was to go up and say, well, I don't really know much about property, because the problem is everyone thinks they know about property, right? When they go through, I'm a landlord, they go through and they go, I know everything about it. So I have no idea structurally, blah, blah, blah. Come up with an augmented reality solution. So if I'm going to scan this brick over here, it's going to tell me something about it. Like, do you think we could do something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's all data driven, right?
No, it is. Yeah, it is. And I think it's it becomes interesting because I think when you view a home, you're right. The information you're getting is most of the time bullshit. And so the person you're relying on is the person that's representing the seller, who has no desire at all to give you the full information. They'll give you enough to get you to buy. And so any way that you could go, okay, has this wall ever had termite damage? And it has this, and you could actually start loading in previous pest inspections, works that have been done. You could look at a dishwasher and go, okay, it's 2 years old, and or it's 10 years old, and has it got a warranty? Has it not? There's all sorts of things you can start doing. So we call it a digital asset on Hutley. So we've been building the concept of a digital asset where you load all this data in around, how old's the aircon, here's the warranty, here's all the information. So when you buy a home now, it comes with that asset that transfers.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And because you move into a home, you don't even know what day the bins go out. Like, so it's just practical information. Like, is it a Tuesday night? Great. So you can now open up on Hutley and see, oh, great, this is when I've got to do what I have to do on that property.
I've been lucky. I bought our house from a builder, right? Yeah. Just built it then we bought it, been in for a year, so I get everything and I'm lucky. But previous properties, I haven't had that luxury. But just warranties, right? Like you call up and it's like, I got nothing, it's not working. And they're like, oh, well, can you provide me with the model number, the make number, the date it was purchased? I'm like, I have no idea, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you're wasting money because you're spending on a repair that you didn't need to do.
Yeah.
So that's really valuable. Also, things like known location of things, right? Like, you get a Sparky come in and it's like, I need to put another light in. Well, they dig half your roof up and go, oh, it's just there, right? That would be quite useful too, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's already a few technologies doing that. So mapping out where all the wiring is at home before it gets plastered up.
Yep.
And so I think as homes coming to the market now, you'll get a much better picture. But
it's like a digital health wallet, but for your house.
Yes.
There you go. Your biggest asset. I mean, this is the key thing, right? Yeah. We're talking about your biggest asset.
Yes, yeah.
You go and buy a car, which is not your biggest asset, from maybe your second biggest asset. Yeah, you're going to have all those records.
Yes, yeah.
Right? It's also important for you. Talked about longevity in your health, right? You take the car in for a service, right? And you spend $500, $1,000 a year to do it. I don't know how many people would spend that on their own body too, but how about on your house, right?
And no one does it in stinches. They go, oh, I'm not going to fix that. That's not a real problem yet. And, there's
and it builds up over time. It comes through.
And then it becomes a very, very costly problem to solve.
Yeah.
And people don't tend to do preventative maintenance on their properties. It's almost this too hard basket, I think. It's, I've got to go hire the tradie, I've got to find to come out, got to get a quote. So back to the AR or AI side, you could actually, there's no reason why I can't, with technology where it is, take a photo and instantly get a quote and solve all the heartache and pain of doing that. Or back to our inspection point, why can't you self-inspect your own property that you own and have a preventative maintenance plan built off-platform, and they just come and fix the different things as they go.
Or even just a scheduled maintenance plan, like, if you've got hydronic heating or something like that, or you've got an air conditioning unit. Most people don't get them repaired because they just don't know why or when. But if you call the company, of course, it's like, oh, you should do that every 12 months, right? Because they make money out of the servicing. But what's the real answer to it? I think, data is the power. Like, if you have it, wind forward 10 years, what does real estate look like?
No bricks and mortar. So I don't think you'll have any brands on main streets. I think that'll be gone. I think real estate will be running as either mega franchises or as the gig economy. But I think we'll also see a significant uplift in self-transact. So Hartley's built as an infrastructure play, and we can serve all three markets. But if I was to bet my money, I see real estate as a gig economy where an agent and property manager run micro businesses working for themselves.
Probably from home in a remote place. I think there is a personal aspect to it though. It's a big transaction, and you'd like someone to kind of give you a bit of advice and transact and stuff like that. What's the most similar industry that you've seen that's kind of going in the direction? And if you don't know one, that's okay too.
Yeah, probably. I think. Car dealerships is probably, not far off either. And you've already started seeing the likes of Cars24, et cetera, coming to market and pushing how vehicles are transacted. So I see vehicles as well as another one. And people's appetite previously was people are more comfortable with, cars is an easy one. So if I want to buy a Toyota Prado, but I'm not sure if I could buy it, I can see a world where a Prado gets delivered to your front door and you've got 7 days to try and buy. And so I can see very quickly a world where, they're convenient to buying a car because that's something you do want to get a feel of and touch and smell. But that doesn't mean you want to go to a dealership and deal with a salesman because people find that very confronting. So I think anything that's reliant on an intermediary, I think has a little chance in the future.
Yeah, okay. So how are you finding different sources of data, tapping into them, they're kind of, they're a bit archaic, they're a bit hard to get to.
Yeah, so I think that's where Hartley's niche is. So we quickly saw back in 2018 as well when we founded the business was that when I founded the business was around consent to data. And if you look at CDR and open banking, you look at where data rights and sovereignty, GDPR, et cetera, are going. If you don't have consent to that data, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And so for Hartley, on our platform, the property manager and the agent, then the vendor, buyer, landlord and tenant all agree to our terms and privacy policies. So we obtain the rights to be able to use that data. We take that as an absolute privilege. So and so we're very, very careful. So when it comes to transferring personal information, for example, we don't rely on the original consent. We'll say to a tenant, hey, do you want your lights turned on? If you say yes, your name, email address, phone number, and moving date and address will be sent to Direct Connect for the purpose of the connection.
Yeah.
So we found that when we went from it was like 22% click-through rate to 44% by purely telling the tenant exactly what we're going to do with their data and how, and what they should expect as a result. And we saw trust go through the roof.
Being transparent.
Good. No, yeah. It's the whole.
Well, people were unlikely to give data in the past, and then now with cyber, it's becoming a bit tighter and stuff like that. Yeah. So I think it's really good. Yeah. To end this, I always ask a big question, right? Yeah. So my big question, and I'm struggling for this one because I think you've answered all the big questions before, but this is completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Well, it's not unrelated. It's a similar industry, right? Yeah. My biggest kind of beef in this industry is tradies that turn up late.
And doctors. Yeah.
Right. So if you, I know it's not part of Hutley or Bondable, and I know it's a different market, but come up with a solution for me on the spot for how we can get tradies to turn up on time.
So tradies, I think it comes down to penalty. Like, if you're not hitting the hip pocket, they're not going to make better decisions. So I think it's a world where you have a smart contract that has built-in penalties.
Yeah. So another interest of yours is in Bondable. Can you explain Bondable and how that's changing the market and consumers? Yeah,
Bondable was born, my wife and I living home. We had a few $1,000s tied up in a bond, and to move into the next home, we had to pay another few $1,000s. And we had this period of time where we had 2 bonds tied up. And we're like, that is outrageous. Like, this is, and it causes a whole lot of pressure for many people. All of the tenants that we researched found, increases mental health, anxiety, reduces their likelihood of moving home, even if that home is not suitable for their family or their needs anymore. We said, this is a problem that we're going to solve. But then we interviewed agents and landlords, and likewise on their side, the line for tribunals too long to claim to the bond. The landlord's out of pocket for, Victoria, 6, 12, 18 months. And so huge issue on both sides of the equation. So Bondable was born from, so it's a win-win-win. So the tenant pays $20 a month. They no longer pay a cash bond, so we call it a cash bond alternative. We provide a bond guarantee to the landlord and to the property manager, essentially taking on 100% of the risk of the tenant. So we're very careful around making sure we get the right terms that share our values and beliefs. But in doing so, the tenant no longer pays a cash bond. They pay $20. At the end of the lease, if there's a claim, we instantly pay the agent and landlord. So we had one recently where the agent rang up and said, I've got an Argentinian tenant who has gone back to Argentina and owes $1,300 on rent. We instantly paid the agent. I couldn't believe it. Historically, that would have been 12 months to claim from VCAT. And then what's your chance of recovering from the tenant? So we called the tenant straight away, explained to the tenant, that they've signed up to this product, and as a result, these are the potential ramifications if they don't pay. And they paid us straight away. And so we took what was a 12, 18-month process and solved it in 24 hours. So Bondable is really about solving a very real problem for tenants, but also for agents. And
kind of like what Afterpay have done, but for the real estate.
For the real estate sector.
Yeah. And I can imagine, if you got a $5,000 bond or something, paying $20 a month, and that's for the life of...
Yeah, for the life of the tenancy agreement. So you're not paying off the bond, it's just to get the guarantee. So we provide the guarantee and a dispute mediation service. But we spoke to transparency before. The whole idea of Bondable is, you should be able to see 3 quotes. You should be able to see what the cost of repairs is. You should be able to see who's going to do the work and when. And so the tenant should have a right to understand what's being done to fix the agreed damage, not, hey, it's going to be $700. And so bringing transparency to that process is really important for, again, an equitable outcome for both parties.
Yeah, and again, data-driven. You do your credit checks through data. It makes the job a bit easier than... And I've been through that process where I've had to get a bond off someone in Victoria and in Queensland as well. And it's not an easy process, right? It's time consuming, it ties up a lot of people, and it's good for the tenant. So, yeah. Look, this has been a really good conversation. I reckon we could go all day with this, but thank you, Jeremy. I mean, this is awesome, right? Yeah. I think you're really revolutionising the industry, which is good. So thanks for coming on the podcast. And
thanks for having
look forward to watching you in the future as things progress.
Yep, thanks very much. Cheers.
If you found today's episode interesting and want to hear more about our Make Tomorrows, please subscribe to our channel.